My name is Ando, and I'm an artist, a photographer, and a member of the Undergang. Every week, I sit down with an artist, a curator, a musician, an author, or anyone else working in the creative fields, and we talk about their work, their life, and what it takes to keep fighting the good fight in our world today. Welcome to the Undergang Armchair. All right, friends, family, members of the gang, welcome back. Undergang Armchair. I am Ando. Here we go, episode 28. It's going down. There's a lot to talk about today, guys. Life is inspiring and interesting, and holy shit, there's a lot of it. I don't even know where to begin. How about this? Today's guest is Valérie Collart. I really butcher French names. I'm sorry, Valérie. She's a really talented and understated artist. She's working on some really great stuff, so you can look forward to that. We got some other exciting news. We have a sponsor, our first sponsor. No, I'm just kidding, but I do have a personal recommendation for you guys. Do you like vacation? Of course you do, dummy. Everybody likes vacation. So, if you happen to be going to Italy for your vacation, for a little jaunt, which I recommend, and you happen to be going to northern Italy, which I recommend, and you happen to be going to the Lake Garda area, which I recommend, go check out Meet Hostel. I know the people who've started it. This is a little pro bono plug for them. But in all seriousness, it's a good-ass hostel. And it's brand new, like I said. So it's got those nice hostel prices without that crusty hostel crustiness that you guys also probably know and love. But this is the real deal. It's really nice. So I'll put a link to that on the show notes page. It's definitely worth checking out. I've been alone all week, you guys, and it's a mixed blessing. My special lady friend has been out of town. She's in South Africa. And yeah, it's a mixed blessing. I'm a mess. But I'm going to tell you guys about that after the interview. And Danes, stick around. I got a few words for you guys too. I got a few choice words for you. So all that coming up after the talk. Oh, it's been a while since I recommended a show for you guys, but get out your pens and paper. This is, oh my God, you guys. Yesterday, I was at David Risley's gallery, and I was checking out the install for the Alex Dacourt show, which is opening this Friday. Holy shit, you guys. This is, we've been talking with several of the guests. I've been talking about how the Copenhagen art scene is expanding and getting better. This is a prime example of what we're talking about. It's a full install. Everything is just the floors, the ceiling. It's completely changed the entire gallery. He's done everything. I met the guy yesterday. He looked exhausted. It's a ton of work. It's really intense. It's beautiful. I won't lie. It's beautiful. It's a sensory experience. It's everything great. So really, you owe it to yourself if you want to go see some art that's engaged and going balls to the wall. And, and working on a lot of different levels too. I don't mean to be crass here. There's a lot going on in this artwork. Go check it out. Go see it. David Risley Gallery this Friday. All right, that about does it. So today's guest this week is Valérie Collart, the French-born artist living here in Copenhagen. Her work is understated and mysterious. She's working in an area between sculpture and photography, mixing the two elements, and her work is just getting better and better. She just won an award from Charlottenborg, one of the main art halls here. She was part of a group show, was awarded the top prize, and is really worth checking out if you don't know her. All right, so enjoy the talk with Valérie.
I did an interview.
I saw that.
And I thought it was so hard because she came with very precise questions and quite deep, I thought, with...
Right, very, very art critic kind of questions.
Totally. And even kind of with a very strong direction, and she had a strong point of view in the questions. So I felt very like, oof.
Right, I have to defend myself.
A bit.
Yeah.
And I know it's not that, you know, sometimes you kind of interpret it that way because you're a bit missing confidence, and it's not that, it's just, you just have to answer. Right. That's all right, you know.
Well, I think it's weird when an interviewer is trying, you know, they don't want to talk about themselves, but they're talking about themselves through the questions.
Yeah, you can like, guess what they
here's
think,
how
you know?
smart I am, and I'm going to let you know in this really sneaky way, but what about you? You know, and they have that really weird back and forth. Mm-hmm. This is the opposite. This is just
But that was a good exercise, I have to say.
I think that's the standard. Mm-hmm. I think that's how a lot of it goes. If you read art criticism magazines and that sort of, you know, there's a couple other podcasts about art. One of them is by a art critic named Tyler Green, and his questions are obviously well thought out, well researched. You know, he's ready and he knows what he's doing, and he's talking about very specific things. I think I would be terrified of that. Yeah. If someone came and asked me questions about my work like that, I'd be like, yeah, you know. But was it a good experience all in all to be interviewed by them?
Actually, it was really good. And even, you know, it made me think a lot. And I think the questions were well put and well think and interesting for me to kind of develop afterwards, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, it's always interesting to think about how the audience engages with your work. Mm. You know, because I think an artist spends so much time in their own heads thinking about their work that sometimes you're like, oh, right.
And sometimes you're a bit far away. You think for you, you know, it's very chaotic right now. And for the public, it's actually very, like she said, it's quite neat what you do. And I'm like, neat? And then I tried to look at it, like if I wasn't the one. And I was like, yeah, but she's right. It's actually, you think it's chaotic right now, but it's your own standard of being chaotic, because obviously it's not. I mean, you know, it was interesting to see it that way.
Yeah, I would say your work's neat, definitely.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced, though, that feeling like if you're working on something for a long time and then you put it on the wall, finished, and all of a sudden it looks completely different to you than it did before? Yeah. It's such a crazy feeling because all of a sudden you get, or also what happens to me is if I'm working on something, and then I have a group of people come and look at it, I can suddenly see it through their eyes in a weird way.
You see it for the first time in a way.
Yeah. It happens with music too. Like if I play music for somebody else, I'll suddenly realize, oh, it also sounds like this, you know? Mm. Which is, I think, why it's important to show artwork. Because in a way, you know, you talk about how artwork should be so personal. It doesn't matter who comes and sees it and all that, but it completely changes the way you engage with it.
Also, the production process, you know, the shorter time you have to show it after you have done it, it's better because you don't have so much time to kind of think too much about it. I experienced that it was very interesting for me to have less time to produce and to be more in a flow.
Right, to finish and just get it out of there.
Get it, it's better.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm stuck on that one because I spent a long time redoing everything.
Yeah, that's, and sometimes you have to let go about that, you know, it's not perfect, I'm a bit too perfectionist. I'm never happy with the result. Yeah. I will always wish to have it framed like that instead of but then I realized that I have to do it in another piece and in another work and not on that one and redo constantly the same.
Yeah. It's a good lesson. I mean, I've been working on a photo project for, if I really think about it, 10 years and it's still not done. And every time I think I'm done, I tear it up and keep going, you know, and maybe I should just finish it and then start a new one. I mean, I am working on other things too, but I just really want to finish this one.
Then you think you're working on something else, but actually you're not.
Yeah.
Because you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Differently, but the same.
Right, and expanding on what you already did and were disappointed with or, you know, felt wasn't completed or whatever.
What you haven't completed in the first, you can do it in the second, and it gives something else, a new direction, a new opening.
Yeah. A lot to think about.
Yeah. Okay.
let's start with you though. You're from France. Where in France are you from?
I'm from Bordeaux. My family is still living there, and I have a bit of family in Paris also. My sister, my aunt. And
so you guys make wine, right? Everybody in Bordeaux makes wine.
Exactly. Not my family, but in my family there was a vineyard, and there was my uncle had a vineyard, and we were actually every summer going and cutting the grapes. And it was a very, very nice memories I have around it.
I imagine it's nice to grow up running around under the grapes and playing in the vineyards and everything.
Yeah. The nature is very beautiful there. The ocean is close, and it's I had a very good childhood there.
Now, is that one of the warmer places in France, or is that one of the colder places?
No, it's pretty warm. It's not as warm as the south of France, near Marseille or Nice. Yeah. It's not the same weather as, I will say, in Italy, but it's definitely warmer than Paris, for example.
Because I know Paris is actually fucking cold a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's cold. You don't have the same feeling. I mean, before I moved to Denmark, I didn't thought about the seasons like that. Winter was a season, but it wasn't a concept like it is in Denmark.
It's the same in California.
It became a very strong concept for me, the seasons and the winter.
Right.
And it's building up years after years, like it's a big thing, winter here. And I didn't have that in France. And
people talk about, the winter of 2008.
Exactly.
I remember, in California, it's like, well, it gets dark and it rains and then it gets sunny again. That's it. That's all that happens.
But that I kind of appreciate it now, because it gives an intensity in the way you're going through seasons and through time and life here that I like.
I actually really like the darkness here in the winter. I know people would laugh at me for saying that, because it gets dark at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon in the winter. But in a way, I think it's so incredibly romantic. I don't mean that. I mean, it's just like it's so gothic and it's so dark and people are all hunched into their coats and walking around, and it's... I don't know.
It's a little bit cozy. Yeah, it is.
I think I'm just genetically ready for I'm half Danish, half Irish, basically. Okay. So I'm ready for the darkness and the rain. But did you grow up making art? Were you at all interested in that, or were you?
I actually been always, yeah. I've been since I was very small. I was drawing constantly. I was building things. My father actually. He had a little interest also in art. We were going in the garage making, carving stones and building with wood. And
was he an artist, like professionally? But
not at all. He was working in a bank all his life, but pretty frustrated, I will say, about that. He always had that dream about doing things,
working with his hands, making things.
Yeah. So it's been here, and I have a aunt also. She's a painter, and as a little girl, I was looking at her, and I really loved.
Right, you can do that.
And she actually, she's living in Paris, and I was going to her every year, and I was in her studio, and she was learning me all kind of things with colors and.
Right. Did you say to yourself, I want to paint like her when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think I've started with painting. It was my first interest in art. Sculpture came after. I didn't thought I will do sculpture or photography. I was interested in painting at first. The very classical mediums, I will say. Yeah. Drawing, painting.
I think it's where it starts. I mean, even if you look at children's books, those are almost always drawing and painting.
Yeah. And colors were very present, while now it's actually most of the time shades of gray.
Is it really? In children's books?
No, now, I mean, in my work, I have a hard time coming back to colors, actually. I'm like, okay, now let's try to work a bit with color, and it's ended up being black and white or shades of gray.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe that has to do with the fact that you live in Denmark.
It was actually present before that.
Yeah. But, I mean, did you ever, okay, so let's say, you're 14, 15 years old. Were you telling yourself, I'm going to go to art school, I'm going to be an artist, I'm going to do this stuff? Or were you thinking...
Yeah, I was pretty focused for a long time, actually.
So just always like that, huh?
Yeah, I was, I've always done that choice of, when I was 15, 18, I will say. When in France, we are a bit forced to do our further education choices quite early. Right. We don't have the same way of taking education, like they make us making choice quickly. Right. What you will do, what job will you do.
Do you go to technical school? Do you go to...
Do you go to the university? Yeah. We don't take years to travel like they do often in the rest of Europe, which is quite good, I think, actually, because you very stressed as a young person to make choices for your life like that.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy I didn't make my choices until
exactly.
later.
Sometimes
because I would have panicked.
Sometimes it's not so obvious.
Oh yeah, no, I had no idea what I was going to do. When I was finished with high school, I just took a year off and worked. Yeah, I had no idea.
Exactly. So yeah, after 18 years old, the final exam, I started at the university in the fine art and literature. Okay. And that wasn't for me. I kind of postponed the art school because my parents were a bit stressed about, are you going to be an artist? Are you sure about that? So they kind of pushed me into a more framed art education.
Was that like a criticism and art history?
Yeah, art history. Yeah. It's more
not
you're
practice based.
It's more about if you're going to teach art, but it's more theoretical than practice. Right. But quickly, I figuring out that it wasn't for me. So I joined the art school. After that first year of tried to be at the university.
Art school. Did you love it? Were you immediately like, this is it? This is what I'm supposed to be?
That was exactly made for me. I thought I was finding my own family, you know, like it was really the place I felt the most comfortable.
It's crazy what a feeling that is. I still remember that when you first get there and you're like, oh my God, this is also education. You can do this.
Yeah, I really enjoy my studies. Like I will remember that all my life. I was so happy. It was the best. The golden age.
Through the whole thing also?
Exactly. Yeah. Huh. I mean, at the end of when I reached the 2 last year of the masters, it's changed a little bit. I was a bit tired sometimes of the art school atmosphere where everybody is a big ego and don't think about after you figuring out that there's a lot of people coming from rich families. And if you're not, you kind of starting thinking, yeah, but that's all good. But after that, what I'm going to do?
What practical skills do I have at
all?
Exactly.
you kind of confront the reality. Yeah. You will get out of that little bubble and that won't be as easy as you think. And there's so many artists. And so it became a little bit less joyful in that way because I started to confront a bit the reality of what it will be to be an artist. Yeah. And how I will make money, the big issue of making money.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing that that's the big failure of art school. They give you an amazing space to work without any consequence in. You can do whatever you want, pretty much. I mean, you have to work hard, but no project is too crazy, no nothing, whatever. But when you're done, it's like getting out of prison. You're just standing there with a suitcase and you're like, now what? And that's why most people become graphic designers because they have some sort of visual skills and that's it. Yeah. That's all you got.
You have to have a lot of energy and a lot of focus and to continue. I mean, it's a big challenge to continue after the art school, I would say.
What happened? What did you do?
So I moved to Paris and then I started to take some small jobs and I quickly figure out that either I will be working in a shop or in a cafe And I will have a hard time making a living out of that with a part-time job. So I started to think, okay, what can I learn?
Right.
I have to learn something that I can use.
Paris is expensive, right?
Paris is very expensive, and you cannot afford an apartment and a studio space. Working part-time in a small job,
right,
it's impossible. I mean, if you have not a family that can support you. So I managed to meet a girl that was doing photo retouching at that time, and she trained me, and I realized that it will be the perfect job to do on the side because I could work freelance. It's good money in Paris when you do that. So it's what I did. I've learned that job, and it was interesting for me to do that. It was still very related to visual practice. I mean, to art in some ways, because sometimes you get to do art projects with photographers.
Right. But you didn't learn any of that in school? You didn't learn any Photoshop or anything? Not
really. It's what I've learned to express myself, to build a personal project, to be critic, but the technical things, I will say, wasn't as good as I expected.
Right. But that's the part where a professional experience can be way better than art school. You know, that's
exactly.
The same thing. I worked in a camera store on and off for like 5 or 6 years selling used cameras and teaching people how to use cameras. I learned more about cameras than I ever did in school. And in fact, when I arrived at school, just from working selling cameras for a year, I knew more than almost every other student there about how a camera actually worked technically, and more than some of the teachers even. Because they just had this very, like, we're talking about the artwork, we're not talking about the tools that make it.
Exactly, but in my art school, the teachers were actually all students. So most of them,
like master's students.
Yeah. So like students that had been graduated maybe 5 years ago, and they became technician for the photography workshop, for example. So that didn't really add the professional experience.
It doesn't bring in outside help at all.
It was a bit running in a closed circle. Too much, I will say. So it's the same. I think I've learned much more outside afterwards. Yeah. As technical, or even the working methods. I've learned more afterwards. Right. And it's been good to get out of the art school at some point. I mean, 5 years was great, but that was time to go after.
Right. So what happened then? You found a way to make a living, and then you just started working in Paris?
Yeah, in Paris it was actually difficult to manage to work and to have the art practice at the same time. I kind of stopped a little bit in Paris. It's only when I moved to Denmark that I found some kind of stability again, or that I could focus again on my art projects.
This is the exact same story I have.
It's why it works for me. I didn't thought it would be like that, but it works better for me here than it worked in Paris, actually.
But it's that stability. That's where Denmark shines. You have the space to work. And that's, I could never pull it off in California because there was just too much all the time that needed to be done, or too much in my brain. I mean, I had a problem too that I was just, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to get some work done. And then someone would call me and say, hey, we're going to go climb some trees and smoke some pot. Are you in? And I'd go, yeah, So socially also, that helps to go to a new country. You don't have as many distractions. But Denmark's so good for, they don't work too much here. There's no 10-hour work days.
There's a big discipline in the working environment about a lot of respect for the employees and the private life and everything, which is very useful for us when we need to do other things on the side, because it doesn't overlap too much.
Exactly.
So that was, and I was also very isolated when I first came here. I had no friends. I didn't know anybody about my boyfriend that I follow here, and I had my child, but that time of isolation's been tough, but at the same time very benefic for my it was a bit monarchical and very good for my art projects.
Well, you become friends with your process.
Exactly.
With trying to make it happen. That's your friend.
Yeah. Let's say it's better now, of course, and I enjoy it much more, but it was maybe necessary, maybe good, if I look at the bright side.
What's the story about coming here? Like, how did that happen? There you are in Paris doing photo retouching and hanging out.
And then my boyfriend, who was Danish, was in France for 8 years at that time. He was a bit tired of France, wanted to move away.
Okay,
and
so you met him in Paris.
We met in the art school in Nice.
Oh, you went to art school.
Yeah, we went together in the art school. It's an art school called Villa Arson in Nice. It's very nice art school. We moved to Paris together, stayed here for 3 years. And then we were working constantly, didn't really work on what we wanted to do as art projects and things. Right. So we thought maybe it's time to change and do things differently. So at that time we thought about going to Berlin. And then he was Danish and he had a place here. So on the way we stopped here and we finally stayed longer than we thought.
Right.
And it ended up being the place where we stayed instead of Berlin even.
And here you are.
And here we are.
6 years
later. Yeah.
Wow. And of course it's easy for him. Although, I mean, I guess, why did he live in France for 8 years?
He lived in Nice and in Paris.
But why? Like, what was... He was
because in Nice it was for the art school.
Okay.
He's got a father coming from Tunisia, so he's speaking French. So maybe the same story as you. He wanted to learn the language, and
right.
I think he wanted to leave Denmark at that time. You know, like a lot of Danish at some point, they want to live a bit outside, and a lot of them are coming back.
Right. They always come back.
For a long time, I hoped actually we will leave Denmark, but he seemed to think it was the perfect place to be.
Right.
And with time, I don't say it's the perfect place, but it's a place that works pretty well.
It's a good place to get work done.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. I mean, we talk about leaving a lot too, and it's just that whole question of like, yeah, but do we want to give up the lifestyle? You know, the not working too much, the healthcare, the biking everywhere, not having a car, not, you know, that whole thing.
Going to one place to another in 5 minutes. Yeah. You save so much time you get so much done out of that time that you save.
It's wild. It really is. You know, if only this place had nice weather and good food, then it would be paradise.
Of course, yeah.
So you guys have been here for 6 years. And I imagine when you first came, it was also hard kind of mentally to make art. I mean, for me, the first year or so, I don't think I really made anything because I was just dealing mentally and emotionally with the fact that I had just moved halfway across the world. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I spoke Danish and such, but I'd never lived in Denmark as an adult, and I didn't really know what I was doing. You know, and it's one of those things, if you look in retrospect at it, you're like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I just moved with 2 suitcases and slept on a pile of blankets on the floor for, you know, a couple of months. Like, what? So, I mean, was it like that for you? Was it chaos and wildness? You were a kid on top of it.
Yeah, it was a bit weird too, because I've actually realized a bit after, what are you doing? You were pregnant and you're coming here without any friends, nothing. You just coming in another country. It's take your entire support structure away. Exactly. I had no money, nothing. It was the worst I could have done. Yeah. But I was a bit, because I had the baby, I was a bit forced to be home and to be not trying to do too much about art projects and stuff. But it was maybe a good time to think. And I used a lot of time walking around in Copenhagen, you know, discovering the city. And it was, it took me maybe, I will say, I had a year where I actually managed to do things at home, where I built up a little studio in my living room. But it was, I will say I've done more than I was doing in Paris right away, actually. Even with a newborn baby and everything? Yeah. I think it's that solitude. It's that forced solitude. Yeah, exactly. Of coming to a new place. Yeah, I had to do, yeah. In a weird way.
because you have nowhere to turn but yourself. You know, you have your partner who you're with, and that's about it. I mean, did he have friends here, or had he been gone for so long that he didn't really know people?
He had few friends, but he was pretty much disconnected about everything. It has changed so much during the 8 years he was away. I mean, it was the first surprise how much the cities has been growing and how much it's been changed. He said, like, when he left, the art world was almost it didn't exist really the same way, and now it's growing and growing.
Right now it's actually really big for a city of this size.
Exactly. And I mean, just the 6 years I've been here, I've seen that changing a lot.
That's wild, huh?
Yeah, and in a good way. I mean, it's really becoming interesting here.
It's funny.
I'm actually very happy I stayed, because I see it growing in a very, very good way.
Well, it's nice because you can also be part of something that's happening.
Exactly.
If you go to New York, you're not going to feel like you're part of. I mean, you could, in a tiny chance, maybe be part of something. But
you try to make your spot.
Right.
While here, you actually can be part of it from the beginning and kind of even building it.
Right.
So that I really like.
Yeah. Is your boyfriend still making art? Is he working?
Not really, but I think we kind of helping each other. I mean, he's the one I'm talking to a lot, and he's kind of implying himself in my projects quite often, and is a big support for me.
It's good. It's good to have someone you can talk to. And also someone who will tell you, nah, it's a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's a big influence, and I'm trusting a lot his point of view and his taste. And
so, when you went to art school, what did your artwork look like? Were you making paintings of flowers, or
the first year I was making like paintings and very. How do you say that? Expressionist, feminist paintings, very colorful and very based on materials and very thick with a lot of texture onto the canvas, and
heavy and passionate,
exactly,
and young and
totally like that. And
that's hilarious. I'd love to see that, knowing what your work looks like now.
Exactly, it was very far away.
Yeah,
and it has changed, and I did a bit of video too, very much about the feminine and feminist and ego, self-portrait, that kind of things.
Right. That's art school. I mean,
yeah, exactly. The first year, you know, you try all kind of mediums and stuff like that. And then from the second year, I started to go more and more to photography and sculpture quickly. And then I dropped, after the second year, I think I've dropped the painting. I mean, the classical way of doing painting like that.
Were you one of the people who said, yeah, painting's dead. Painting is no more?
No, I wasn't thinking that way, but I haven't pushed.
Just wasn't your
I'm
material.
using painting now, you know, I kind of focus, it's a part of my...
your sculpture, right?
I'm painting a lot of the sculptures, and it's a concern I have, and I think there's not just one way to do painting. It's not just always a flat surface that you cover, no.
Sure.
So it's not that I'm not doing painting anymore, but not the same way, of course, as when I came. And
right. What happened? So when you left school, what did your artwork look like?
Oh, it was pretty big scale sculptures, very minimalistic, very polished.
Is it similar to what you're making now, or is it like the beginning of what you're making now, kind of?
It's, I will say the line is still here now. But I've been forced, and it's been positive, to do smaller things and to have the studio practice building up more, in the way that before I was thinking of, I had an idea and I got to realize the idea pretty much without let's say I didn't.
No limitations on size.
Yeah, on size, on material, and I had technician to help. So it was pretty much the idea was close to the result.
Right.
But now I'm letting more chance, I will say, or experimentation going on in the studio practice,
right,
which give more sense to my research and more intensity in the work and more
right, and finding solutions,
research.
For problems on your own organically.
Exactly. So that's I think that it was maybe a bit more boring before because I didn't. Those kind of solutions that you have to find makes the whole interest at the end.
Right. No tension. Mm. So when I first met you, you came in with some photographs, which I still don't know how you did. They were photographs of things like trees or buildings, which were then lit up with some sort of light, like it looked like gold leaf or something inside of it.
Yeah,
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a project I worked for maybe 1 year and a half. It's I call them falsities, and it's a photo project where I used lambda prints because I needed the chemical ink.
Right,
to
the
react.
actual C print, traditional photo material.
Exactly. And I'm actually I used a little very thin sandpaper, and I was physically scratching the actual photograph, and then the ink disappear layer by layer, and the first layer it turns red, and then when you scratch it more it becomes yellow, and when you touch the paper then it's white. And I was actually kind of drawing or changing.
So all those colors came from scratching?
From scratching the print.
Yeah, they were really pretty. And that's the whole thing, because they didn't look digital. Like the effect could have been very digital or done digitally. But then I was looking at them, just thinking, like, how the hell did she do this? I thought you painted over them with something.
No, it's more just of removal than adding. It's a subtractive kind of process.
They were very pretty. I mean, that's what struck me. And I remember you were showing in Paris at that time. You didn't really.
Yeah, and then I got to show them in Berlin last year. And right now they're in Calais, in the Musée des Beaux-Arts.
Ooh.
It's in an exhibition called Monument, because one of the series, it's a tree in front of a monument. Mort, death monument in Nice. The tree is actually planted just in front of that monument, and it's kind of fitting exactly the architecture, and it's hiding the actual monument. So I scratched the tree, and you could see the gesture as a symbolic way of you want to remove the tree to find the architecture behind again, and at the same time you kind of reactivate the war memory, because it made like a big explosion in front of that architecture. I mean,
that's hard for the viewer to see, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to tell like that when you don't see the.
But I just saw this weird materialism of it. They became so three-dimensional in the way that you treated them, which I thought was really interesting. But, I mean, it kind of reminds me, too, when you were first here, you never even really had shows in Denmark. How did you start to build a network? How did you start finding people to exhibit with? And
it's been very, I feel it's been quite long. I mean, I started to have more exhibitions outside of Denmark than in Denmark, and it's pretty recent. I will say that I have few shows in Denmark. It started like maybe I had one 2 years ago in Carlsberg, that show called Ko-I.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Where I had few walks. Yeah. That was my first show I had in Denmark. And then this year I've been contacted by a curator called Nina Walk. She invited me to do a few pieces for a show called out of order, the nature of material, it was related to Architecture Without Border, Danish Architecture Association.
Uh-huh.
So we had a little group show where she invited me. It was in a gallery called Lead and Gory in Vesterbro.
Leaden Gallery?
Lead and Gory.
I don't know
It's
that one.
two architects that have a gallery in front and they're walking in the back. And so we actually used the space, but the show was curated by that girl and we were 4 invited there.
See, and that's how it happens, is people start to know who you are and they invite you.
Exactly.
Places.
So she's seen my work at that COI. That's why she invited me. And then Charlottenburg this year.
Right, and you won the prize.
And yeah.
Congratulations.
And thank you.
What was the prize?
So the prize is a solo show that I have to prepare for next spring exhibition in 2015.
Okay, so you'll be the featured artist.
Yeah, I will have a room where I will have a solo show.
Who was there, like a jury?
Yeah, there was a jury. I think there were 5.
Oh.
2 Danish, 1 coming from Norway, and Esperanza Rosales, I remember her name. There were, different nationalities among the jury.
Man, that's great.
Yeah, that's
show at Charlottenburg next year.
That's definitely a huge opportunity for me.
Oh yeah.
And of course, I'm very happy to have more shows in Denmark because it makes things more easy, and then I can think about bigger scale sculptures, and it's always difficult to kind of bring your things abroad. When I had a show in Paris in November, and just the entire organization of shipping everything, it's kind of limited what you can do.
It's terrible.
Financially, everything. So definitely having more things going on in the place where you live make it more.
Well, the thing too is that if you have a coming exhibition in Denmark, you have such a better chance of getting public funding.
Also, yeah.
That whole system's put together to support coming exhibitions. So now's the time you got to apply for a bunch of money.
Exactly. It's my plan.
Yeah. Because, you're just like, oh, I'm having a show at Charlottenburg. Everyone's like, oh, whoa, what's this? What's going on here? People will start paying attention. But so I think I saw the work. Did you have 1 work in Charlottenburg in the show there?
I had 3, 1 sculpture and 2 photographs. Okay,
I saw one of the photographs. The one that got messed up at the printers and had to be redone.
Yeah.
That's my behind the scenes. Yeah, there was one of them that had to be redone. And it was a black and white photo. Mm-hmm. And it was a photo of sculptures, I'm assuming, that you made.
Yeah.
And so... tell me about this. What's going on there? What it is?
So it's a little sculpture that came by chance, I will say, in the studio while I was trying all kind of things. Mm-hmm. So it's basically a stick of wood painted as, like you will say, as a marble pillar.
Yeah, marbleized, kind of tie-dye.
Like a texture of marble.
Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry, yeah.
And so the painting dropped and dried like that, and then I cut it and put 2 pieces together, and the leftover of painting still hanging out like that, been tied with a rubber band. Mm-hmm. So it creates some kind of. It's a small scale sculpture. If you see it in reality, that you won't see it because I made the choice to show it as an image, but it's quite small. And it looked like a marble pillar, you will say, something like that. But I've chosen to show it as a photograph because I wanted to make a strong statement about the way I wanted the public to see that thing. I didn't want it to have the physical object in the space to experiment, but more a very definite view of that object. And I wanted to disrupt a bit the scale of that object.
Right, it became much bigger.
So you kind of losing the feeling of size. So I want to look it like a piece of architecture more than a little object.
Right, a construction which is then presented through a photograph. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I've seen several of your sculptures, or photographs of your sculptures, I should say. There's also one with some boards that go across some objects you've piled up.
Yeah.
What are these sculptures? Like, what is it purely a material and an exploration of materials and textures and spaces?
Yeah, it's basically kind of object or installation I'm building in the studio to be photographed. It's not something I'm keeping afterwards. I'm destroying them, or I don't pay attention. Maybe they will be reused later in another project, or they will be part of something else. But I make the choice of using them to be photographed and to be fixed at some point in that specific way. And
but what is it that compels you to make these sculptures? What is it about them that is exciting for you?
It's what is it?
But I mean, let's put it this way. There must be some sort of level which, you know, you're trying out things, and at some point you look at it and go, yeah, that's it. That's it. What is it about it that's so exciting at that point? I mean, do you see the photograph in your head, the coming photograph?
No, actually, it's more like it's in the process of making. I'm taking a lot of pictures. It's where it's where it starts. I'm trying things in the studio. I'm building. I'm really free in the experimentation in the studio. Maybe I'm seeing things, you know, that I keep in my mind. I'm around me, you know, when I'm walking around, and then I want to translate them into object at some point, but I don't have a precise idea. Okay, this I will translate it, but I have those images that I'm thinking I want to translate that feeling in an object. Like I was at the airport in Tunisia 2 years ago, and I took a picture of those huge marble pillars that were actually painted, and it was fake marble. And I took the picture, and it stayed in my mind, and then it came back into that object later.
So it's like a shadow of a thing which you saw.
I think it's
not the same thing, but it's a representation of that thing. It's
actually some kind of a vocabulary or something my own way of looking at the world that I'm keeping, and then I'm translating that into my objects.
Right, and reconstructing
them. And I'm quite interested into changing the way of we look at things. Like that's why I'm always working on the simulacrum and the materiality of the objects. I like to create new way of seeing regular things, like a stick of wood will become a pillar, and
right.
Painting will be a soft material that the physicality is quite strong suddenly in another way that you will.
Is it constantly? I mean, it seems like also if you're taking photographs and then rebuilding and then taking more photographs, it's actually not just an object which when it's done, it's photographed. It's a building of this bridge between photograph and object. And you're constantly doing one and then the other and then one and then the other and back and forth until you reach some sort of balance between the two of them. Exactly.
And sometimes there's a moment where I don't know if it will be object-based or image-based. The question is still open. Is it going? I'm not sure. I will choose to show it as a photograph. Sometimes for a long time I think, okay, this is an object. And then there's a moment where I think, no, this is more interesting now as a picture. So it's not that I have that really structured plan that I will do a photograph now of that object. It's really coming into the process of when I'm walking.
Well, it sounds also like you're doing it with your heart and your intuition. You don't have a clear conceptualized idea about exactly what it is you're building.
No, I don't have that way.
Do you write about your artwork ever?
Yeah, I do actually.
Is it hard?
Sometimes, yeah. I will say that there's a time where I allowed myself to be very not conceptual about what I'm doing, and I'm building and I'm trying and I'm following a lot of my intuitions. And of course, there's a moment where I step back and then I try to put words into that. And I think it's very important to do that, to not just going with the intuitions all the time, that it's important to step back and try to put words on what you do. And
right, it's like you were saying earlier with that interview, just the questions themselves can help you think about what the answers even are. I have a hard time often. People will be like, what are you doing here? And then you're like, well, I have this feeling, but that's all I really have. You can't really, it's hard to find the words for it, I think.
And also because I feel that I'm in a very formal and materialistic approach in my work. It's not that I'm not engaged politically or, it's not related to another field that I can be supported with. It's really about forms and pure forms and materiality.
You can't write about Facebook and say, oh, modern social media and da-da-da-da-da,
Yeah, you don't have all that external talk about it. I mean, you can relate to that. This is very formal what I'm doing. It's very into the aesthetic experience in itself. So,
well, that was the question I had, is that it is, it seems to be this process of building and destroying something which you don't even really know what is, but it has these very, very formal qualities. And, like we were talking about earlier, I think it is very neat and it's very tight and controlled. You may call it chaos, but the result is not chaos at all. It's very finished and very tied up in its own thingness, its own materiality. And it makes me almost think of like, what was it, Plato, that said all things have an inherent thingness? They have a thing which, an archetype which represents them. There isn't just this rock and that rock. There is the idea of rocks.
Yeah.
And it seems like, you're talking, you're turning a piece of wood into a pillar, but you're really talking about what is wood and what does it represent.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of distance with the original material I'm using.
Taking it out of context and putting it into a new context.
Also, if you look at the photographs, they are pretty neutral. I mean, the background, there's no sign of what it is, where we are.
Right.
It's like the white cube, the metaphor of the white cube. There's just the object which can give it. It can be a bit sometimes too clean even. Right.
And you even made it black and white, the other one, taking out the color, which we're used to seeing these objects in. It's pretty wild, the whole thing. But when you're taking pictures, is that just another way of changing the context of the items?
Yeah, like I was saying, I haven't finished actually. It was about the fact that I'm taking a lot of pictures in my studio when I'm doing things, just to take notes, things like that. And then I'm looking at that when I'm not in the studio, because I have that very kind of settled schedule about which day I can be in the studio, which day I cannot. So to keep working, even though I'm not able to go in the studio, I'm taking constantly pictures, and then I'm looking at them afterwards. So I think it's influenced a lot the way I'm looking at my own things. I'm looking at them a lot on my telephone, on those pictures. And then I come back to the studio and I'm like, sometimes disappointed with the objects. I'm like, wow, that
looks so much better on my phone.
That looked better as a photograph on my phone. So that's kind of transforming my first intention with the object.
Right.
And then maybe it became a photograph because I've seen that as a representation for a long time. During that time, I wasn't in the studio. So the representation became the point. So it's where sometimes it's playing, the game is playing, is that I'm picking the representation of the objects instead of the objects itself. Right. So it's the interest in those pictures that I'm pointing of the memory of the physical objects, how it's been changed by the image,
Right.
What's the relationship in between the image or the objects and what it's created? Are you kind of losing the the memory of what the object looked like through the image. And
how is a photograph of a sculpture still a sculpture?
Exactly. And how can I still work with sculpture, making images? So that's my old wonder at the moment when I'm working with photography of sculptures.
Are you even concerned with photography in any other way? Or is it simply just a tool? You know what I mean? Like, it's not a classic photographer.
No.
You're not a classic photographer in that way.
No.
Are you concerned with technicality of it? And, or is it more just like, this is a tool. I use this as a tool to present things in a certain way.
Actually, I will say that I'm using it as a tool, as a medium, basically, but I will never say I'm a photographer. I don't feel I'm a photographer at all. And I'm working with a lot of photographers, and I love photography. I always been very sensitive to photography, but it's definitely not my medium. Right.
Well, I mean, I think there is, in a way, a long relationship between sculpture and photography in a strange way, but sculptors rarely engage like photographers on that level. They're using it as another tool.
Yeah, I'm using it as a tool. I will say the tool of the point. It's giving a point of view. It's the point of view
that playing with context.
Exactly, that I define at that moment.
Right. So, do you think you've found your thing, essentially? I mean, are you going to go back to painting expressive?
No, but definitely I would like to do my project right now. It's to come back to bigger scale sculptures and a bit more of installations, I will say, because I've been doing a lot of small scale sculptures, like objects, and I would like to experiment a bit more in the exhibition space.
It helps to know where you're going to show more, so you can actually think about the space and what it means and how it works, etc.
Yeah, and also to have more shows will also help to have more installation practice and things like that.
Do you have a clear idea about what you're going to do next year at Charlottenburg, or is that kind of...
Not totally clear, but I have starting points. I will say I have directions.
Right. You're not worried. You got stuff to work on.
Yeah, I have plenty of ideas constantly. It's not a problem for me.
It's a matter of time.
It's more a matter of time. Exactly.
Right. How's your Danish coming?
Yeah, it's better.
Do you speak French with your daughter?
Yes, I speak French. With her. She has started the French school in August, so now she's pretty fluent with French and Danish. So we can speak French together. I've always speak French to her that in order that she could learn, but she never replied French before. So for a year now she does. Right. But my Danish it's been better and better. I'm using it more and more, actually.
And you guys speak French at home usually?
French and a bit of English now, yeah.
It's tough. Danish is a really tough language.
It is.
I guess finally I wanted to ask you, like, who was it when you were, let's say when you were in school and you were starting to learn about artists, at least when I was in school at that time, where you're just learning so much and seeing so many new things. Who was it? Like, who's your big picture? Like for me, one of the first ones for me was Soloit.
Okay.
And I thought, oh shit, you can work like that. He's the one who blew open the doors, like where you can just make an idea and even have someone else make it for you. You don't even have to, just that I didn't realize that was also artwork. He was the first one that really showed me that. Do you have any of those kind of heroes of?
Yeah, I had, it's been evolving and changing constantly. Some artists that I like today, I will have not understand that I could have liked them before. But I will, like, when I started to do sculpture, I was very, very impressed by, Tony Smith sculptures. Those black minimalistic sculptures. That was something very strong for me. And then later came that Richard Tuttle. That I've seen the exhibition and Nicolas Wallner. That was also a big thing for me because it's the kind of work I will not like at all when I started my art school, but that I can see differently today.
So pared down. Richard Tuttle, yeah. He's a funny guy.
And
so, I mean, you definitely consider yourself a minimalist.
Yeah, I think it's the works that I've been very moved by. It's definitely like a big experience for me was when I was in New York. It was maybe 7 years ago. I've been to that Dia Beacon exhibitions place, museum. And that was a very big experience for me in terms of walks in the space, and it was kind of
sacrilegious?
How do you say that in English?
What is it in French?
Sacré.
Sacred.
Yeah, when it touched
right, it's almost a religious experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sacred, holy.
It was very strong. But yeah, I think I'm very, very interested into minimalistic works. But it's kind of, it can be. I'm also very interested with designers' works. There's a lot of designers, experimental ones that I find very, very creative and interesting.
Right, making functional objects.
But that are very on the edge of the art object too.
Right.
Like Andrea Branzi or Gaetano Pesce is Italian, or Martino Gamper is a designer, but they are really, in that.
Right, in that some sort of weird half area.
Art design. It's functional, but it's very interesting. And
so, I mean, in conclusion, would you say that art? You mentioned you had a very almost religious experience. Is that what art's for? I mean, is that what it is? Is that for? I mean, I don't mean to put religiousness into it. I just mean like that physical experience of walking through that space.
It's more like, I will say, the strongness of the aesthetical experience.
Yeah.
I think it's in that aesthetical experience. It's close for me to a religious experience. Right. I'm not a religious person. I'm not a believer in that way. But it's in that aesthetical experience, in the art forms, that I found that intensity in the way of looking at the world, or in life, or being a human in life, in the world. I mean, it's in that,
part of being alive. That's really interesting. I haven't felt that way in a while about artwork, and I'm trying to get back into it. Just that sort of like overwhelming feeling.
Yeah, like I remember when I was younger, I've seen that show of Mark Rothko in the modern art museum, modern Musée d'Art Moderne in Paris. And I remember I cried. I mean, it was very strong for me, those paintings in that space.
And that's amazing too, because that's exactly what he was working on.
Yeah.
He was exactly working on that aesthetic experience.
It was, I've been very moved by that exhibition. It's not the same. I've seen them, printed, but it never really catch me the same way. But when I've seen them physically, it was really, really strong.
You got to apply for money from the Danish state to go to Texas and see the Rothko Museum.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, his work's in the desert. I've heard it's amazing.
I would really like to see also Tyrrell, the volcano, what he's building in there.
Actually, that may have been one of the last times I had that sort of experience in New York. I saw a James Tyrrell piece where me and my friend actually sat there for hours. It was one where he'd cut a hole in the ceiling of PS2, I think it was. Or was it PS1? One of the old public school museums. Cut a hole in the ceiling and had lights, and you had to sit there and wait for the point in which the inside became lighter than the outside. And there was this like weird flash that happened optically where all of a sudden it went boom, and it was darker outside than inside, and you're just watching planes go by and birds and everything. And we must have sat there for 2 hours or something.
So you see what I'm talking about, that intensity of, or that attention on things that you actually kind of losing on the everyday basis. You don't pay attention the same way, but the art forms force you to pay attention in subtleties. You will not, I mean, it's what I hope, you know, that's why maybe I have such a subtle walks. It's because I would like to force a subtle attentions on things.
Well, I mean, it's a way to do something with life which wouldn't happen if it wasn't for art. You know, you wouldn't do these things. You wouldn't engage. I wouldn't sit in a room in New York and stare at the sky for 2 hours. No. If it wasn't for these artworks. Yeah.
Yeah, you won't do that. Yeah. You will not look at the birds, notice even the birds maybe, or things like that.
Yeah, that's wild. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right, holy shit, guys. When's the last time you experienced an artwork with your body like that? I was really thinking about it after this conversation, and it's true. It's just one of those really beautiful moments when you can just engage 100% with what you're looking at or what you're experiencing. One of the last times I felt that, actually, I saw an Olafur Eliasson piece here in town called The Blind Passenger. It was a really long hallway built in the middle of a museum filled with fog and different colored lights, and it was just this completely crazy tactile experience. And it was beautiful. It was really, you know, I think perhaps maybe the future of art is really tactile and experiential, or at least the future of museum art. It's something which, you know, it's hard to compete on a two-dimensional level with that sort of 3D experience. But really, have you asked yourself, when's the last time you experienced art in your body like that? It's a good question. It's something to go seek out, you know. All right, so look, like I said, I've been living alone for the past week. My significant other is out traveling, and I have gotten a lot of work done. I have finished 2 series and put them up on my website. I've joined Twitter. I've networked. I have applied to shows. I've done all sorts of great stuff, and, you know, I feel really good about it. But isn't it crazy how when you're so used to living together with somebody, and then you all of a sudden are alone, you just fall to pieces? I don't know about you guys, but that's what's happened to me. You know, I'm getting a lot of work done on the photo, but I'm not really doing anything else, that's for sure. So anyways, if you guys knew who I was, I'd tell you to go look at my website, but sorry, nope. Not gonna mix those two things, at least not yet. So I will remain Ondo to you. Now this is for the Danes. You guys, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is today I was listening to a podcast made here in Denmark, which if you guys don't know about, you have to check out. You're going to be so excited. It's called Third Ear Podcast. And the reason this is for the Danes is because the podcast is in Danish. But those guys make a world-class podcast, I'm telling you. It's a little bit This American Life, a little bit of Radio Lab. It's investigative, it's storytelling, it's searching, and, you know, the one I listened to today has been out for a little while, but it was about a woman who went to Greenland in the 1930s to be a nurse and then disappeared. And what, you know, her footsteps led out into the ice, and then either she jumped in the water or was pushed or got lost, and a woman goes to Greenland and investigates and tries to find what this woman did all those years ago. And, you know, it's beautiful and it's touching and it's interesting. And that's what professional radio should be. Not like this show. But really, check it out. Third Ear Podcast. Quality ass radio being made here in Copenhagen. And they won a bunch of prizes too, by the way. But if you don't know about it, check that out. So the other thing I want to say is, now we can see who is listening to this show. And we can see who's visiting our website. Denmark, you're getting your ass whooped. I just got to say, you know, we're based here in Denmark. A lot of the artists we speak to are Danish. All the artists have some sort of connection. They're either exhibiting or whatever. Look, Denmark, about 7% of our visits to our website is Danish. How do you feel about that? Do you feel threatened? Do you feel sad? I'm just wondering, because we've got a good amount of listeners. I'm satisfied with the growth of this podcast. A lot of Americans, Ukrainians, Swedes, Ukrainians, huh? That's wild. Swedes, British, Italians, Germans. There's a lot of people out there who are somehow or another finding out about this show. But 7%, Denmark, 7%. Are you really going to let yourself get your ass kicked like that? So what I'm asking you guys is to tell somebody, this goes to the Danes only, tell somebody you know. If you listen to this show, tell them to get into podcasts. Hell, tell them to listen to Third Ear. They don't even have to listen to this one. But I mean, come on, guys. There's all sorts of really, really great internet-based audio out there. And it's time to start enjoying some of that. It really is. It's a brave new world out there. And in the meantime, a little teaser for next week. I am working on getting a huge, huge influence on cultural life in Copenhagen. Explosive even, you could say, to be the guest next week. So please stay tuned for that. And finally, I just want to say thanks for listening to all you guys, to all our listeners. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. And you're helping us keep this going and helping us get better every time, episode after episode. So I bow to you. Thank you. This week's episode produced by the Undergang Armchair. Intro and outro music by Heavy Links. Once again, links to Heavy Links on our About page. Interstitial music provided by Passion Hi-Fi. It's good music, and there's a link to that on the show notes for this episode. And that leads me to our website. We have a great website. We put a lot of work into our show notes. There's links to the stuff we talk about, to people's websites. And you can check out all of our guests. We've had a lot of great people on this show. Go back, check out some old interviews if you're new. And we even just released a photo essay on photogravure printing with our friend Steve Stacy from one of the previous episodes. We have a step-by-step photo essay on photogravure printing. You gotta go check it out. Also, check us out on Twitter, the Undergang on Twitter. It's a great platform. We're really loving it. And we share a lot of information about our posts and retweet information from others and have a general good time. You can email me, Ando, A-N-D-O, at undergang.net if you have any questions, any comments, anything. And that's it. Thanks again for listening, guys. We'll catch you next week.